here we are together.
Back in the kitchen. Awesome. So, there's no way that we can pop into our pantries right now and look through everything on our shelves. But we wanted to explore together here a little bit about the building blocks of the Ashkenazi kitchen. And of course, one of the fundamental ideas is the separation between milk and meat, and we talk about that in the unit on kashrut. But I really want to drill into some of the specific ingredients that we use again and again in the Ashkenazi kitchen.
Sounds good.
All right. So
Some of my
what are you
favorite
inspired?
flavors in
Yeah.
the world.
Oh, yeah.
Well, just smelling dill makes me swoon. Oh, catch me.
Oh, my God.
No, seriously. I just adore it. It's so aromatic. One of the things about dill is that it can grow in cold climates, and so you can enjoy a fresh herb year-round. It's wonderful, as you know, the pickle master here.
Yeah.
You can hardly have a pickle when it's not a dill pickle, and it just adds so much depth of flavor.
Yeah, although if you try making pickles with dill that is not flowering dill in Eastern Europe, they will tell you that it's not a real dill pickle. So.
True.
So for me, I'm just looking out at sort of the essential component of a Yiddish kitchen for me is schmaltz, right? Is rendered poultry fat, and I always grew up with chicken schmaltz. I grew up with we called it liquid gold. It was always yellowish. Sometimes we flavored it with onions, and that everything that was a little greasy, but delightfully so. Like kasha varnishkas without schmaltz, it's dry. You don't want it. Okay, but only until later did I learn how important goose fat and goose in general was to the Ashkenazi story in Eastern Europe, and how in fact there's sort of a hierarchy of schmaltzes. Goose schmaltz being the best schmaltz, perhaps the most neutral in flavor, the highest smoke point. Then you have duck schmaltz if you're lucky to get it, and then the lowest of the low is the chicken schmaltz. Still love it, much more American schmaltz. But these are for the fleischig, for those meat meals. This is where so much of that flavor comes from, those cooking fats.
And you want to point out that this is our chicken schmaltz.
Yes.
And that this is our goose schmaltz. And you can really see the difference in the color.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Go ahead. No, it's just that he mentioned kasha varnishkas, so
yeah,
that is like the perfect segue into kasha. So kasha is just a generic term in Russian for porridge, but it specifically refers to buckwheat groats. And it's not actually a grain, it's a grass, but it has this wonderfully nutty smell. And one of the brilliant things that Jews did when they started using kasha was not just eat it plain as a porridge, but they mixed it with noodles and added that schmaltz that you were talking about, and came up with this dish called kasha varnishkas, which American Jews only have with bow tie noodles. I can assure you that that wasn't the case in the old world. But again, we talk about how foods evolve and how they move through different forms, and this is a great one.
well, I mean, we really can't talk about the Jewish kitchen without talking about garlic, right? Jews long associated with garlic. I think we talk about that in the course. Garlic is everywhere. Garlic is in everything. So you've got to have your garlic. And I'd say onion is equally as ubiquitous in this kitchen, in this pantry. We're starting everything with our onion. That is our flavoring agent along with the garlic.
Jews are sometimes called the stiff-necked people, and there's also hard-necked garlic. So I think it really shows that it goes together so perfectly.
The other thing that's really important to mention is that both onions and garlic are really nutritious. Garlic, you know the phrase, garlic is as good as 10 mothers. It will keep maybe some of your friends away if they haven't been eating the garlic. So the idea is that you all have to gather together and eat garlic at the same time. But it mellows too when you cook it. But it provides a lot of vitamins, especially when you have a meager diet, as many Eastern European Jews did.
Yep.
I'm right now staring at and in love with the dairy on this table. The butter and the farmer's cheese So growing up, I grew up in a house that mostly had margarine. This was pretty common for people who grew up in it.
Me too.
I didn't taste real butter till I was 18
Oh my!
in Switzerland.
I don't think I tasted real butter until around the same time in my life. And my grandmother, who was born in a shtetl, now in Ukraine, was once Poland. The thing she misses the most from her life in the shtetl was the fresh butter. They had a cow. They would make the butter fresh at home. They would churn the butter. They would turn the milk into farmer's cheese, and they'd use that to make their blintzes. And I always think about what would it be like if we were growing up, these blintzes and eating a lot of these Jewish foods made with the real things, made with butter and margarine and homemade cheese instead of the processed supermarket varieties. And it makes me sad to think about what I missed. But these are just, again, such a source of flavor and freshness in the Jewish kitchen.
I'm speaking from experience, you still have many years ahead of you, Jeffrey, to catch up.
Thank you, Dara.
Okay.
So we've got one more thing on the table here, and I think this is a big one.
Yeah.
So we've got these beautiful dried mushrooms from Poland, and I think that is what I feel a little bit sad about not having experienced when I was younger. The Ashkenazi kitchen was full of mushrooms. This was something that you could forage. It was free food, right? And in the United States, the mushroom, the flavors of the mushrooms we get are just it's not the same thing.
Well, we had that experience where we made mushroom barley soup.
Yep.
And we never thought it was that good. And we went to Poland and we made the same mushroom barley soup, the krupnik, with these dried forest mushrooms, and it blew us away.
Yeah,
the flavor
like the best soup.
was to another level. And so much of what we've lost transferring a cuisine from one part of the world to another was the knowledge of how to forage for mushrooms, of what we can and can't eat, of how to collect our food in a way that was once done by our ancestors, by my grandparents. And so the mushrooms, for me, really connect me to the land of Eastern Europe. It brings me back to where our families are from and some of the knowledge that I think we're trying to regain in this work.
And it's also a wonderful example of the frugal kitchen, because these mushrooms are foraged either in the late spring or in the fall when the autumn rains begin. But mushrooms are perishable, so what do? You dry them. And the drying makes for a very concentrated flavor, and that's what gives the soup such... If you make that soup just with fresh mushrooms, it's not going to taste as good. So it's really the essence of the soil and the damp leaves on the forest floor. Just smelling them carries me back.
So if we are encouraging our viewers, the folks taking the course to kind of, think about their pantry, do we have any advice that we want to offer? What should be in your kitchen?
It might be a stretch to ask everyone to go out and render goose fat so that you have goose schmaltz. If you have the opportunity to taste it, we encourage you to. I would say that of the three fats, for every day, I use butter. I don't use schmaltz. I don't know about you.
I mix it up.
You mix it up. Okay. I can't live without fresh farmer's cheese. It comes in different forms. Some is drier, some is moister. There's a German cheese called Quark. There's a Russian one, Tvarog, which you can get in the Russian stores. So you can find many different degrees of tanginess and acidity in that cheese, and you should experiment with them all.
Yeah, I think my advice would be just, if you start with good ingredients, if you start with good tasting butter or schmaltz and not just the generic cheap stuff that you get at the market, your final dish, your outcome will be that much better, that much richer, that much more exciting and flavorful, and will actually transport you back to where these dishes first came from. And so that to me is the big learning. And I love to make my own butter and render my own schmaltz and make my own farmer's cheese. I know not everyone is going to do that, but I would say do one of them. It's really fun. It's not too hard. Perhaps my favorite is making farmer's cheese, because all it is really heating milk up, teasing it, almost boiling it, and then adding some acid, and it curdles, and you strain it, and it's just simple and easy, and will make the cheese blintz.
Oh yeah.
It'll make that cheese blintz, the I think the tastiest cheese splints you'll ever have.
Yeah.
And you can use the whey to make bread, and it makes a beautiful, beautiful, very tender dough. So nothing goes to waste in the Ashkenazi kitchen.
Now you're thinking like a balabusta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've turned into one. Right.